The halls of Westlake High School were quiet by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Most students had left for the day, rushing to sports practice or heading home, leaving behind empty classrooms and hallways littered with forgotten papers and discarded lunch wrappers. This was when Ray's day truly began. Ray had been the head custodian at Westlake for almost 15 years. At 52, his salt and pepper hair and slight limp from an old construction injury made him a familiar sight to everyone at school. He moved through the hallways with the quiet confidence of someone who knew every corner of the building better than anyone else. Students generally treated Ray with respect. He was the one who found lost phones, kept extra umbrella bags for rainy days, and never reported minor infractions that might get kids in trouble. To the faculty, though, he was mostly invisible, just the man who made problems disappear overnight, whether it was a broken heater or graffiti on the bathroom wall. "Evening, Ms. Patel," Ray called out as he pushed his cleaning cart past the library. The librarian looked up from her computer and smiled. "Hi, Ray. Don't worry about the back corner today. The astronomy club left a telescope set up for tomorrow's meeting." Ray nodded and continued down the hallway toward the math department. Most days followed the same routine. Classrooms first, then hallways, followed by bathrooms and common areas. He enjoyed the predictability and took pride in his work, even if it wasn't the life he had once imagined for himself. As he approached the math wing, he heard voices coming from Mr. Harrington's classroom. This wasn't unusual. Mr. Harrington often kept his classroom open after hours for students who needed extra help, especially during exam season. Ray slowed his cart, not wanting to disturb them. "I still don't get how to find the derivative of this function," a frustrated voice said. "Can we go through it one more time?" Ray paused outside the door. Calculus, he couldn't help but smile to himself. The subject had always been a favorite of his. Inside the classroom, 5 students were clustered around Mr. Harrington's desk, staring at a problem on the whiteboard. Mr. Harrington was a young teacher, only in his 3rd year at Westlake. He was known for his difficult tests and impatience with students who couldn't keep up. "Look, I've explained this 3 times already." Mr. Harrington sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not that complicated. You just need to apply the chain rule here." Ray could see the confusion on the students' faces from the doorway. One of them, a boy with glasses who played in the school band, looked close to tears. Ray recognized him. The kid always said hello and once helped Ray carry a heavy box of cleaning supplies up from the basement. Ray was about to continue past the door when Mr. Harrington looked up and noticed him. "Can I help you with something?" the teacher asked, his tone making it clear that Ray's presence was an interruption. "Just doing my rounds, sir," Ray replied, reaching for his mop. "I can come back later if you're still using the room." The students turned to look at him, and Ray noticed the relief on their faces at the brief break from their struggles with calculus. Mr. Harrington glanced at the clock on the wall, and then back at the problem on the board. "Actually," Mr. Harrington said with a slight smirk forming on his face, "maybe you can help us out here." Ray looked up, uncertain if he had heard correctly. "Me, sir?" "Yeah, why not?" Mr. Harrington turned to his students with a grin. "Let's see if our janitor can solve this problem. It might help you all see how simple this really is." The students shifted uncomfortably. One girl with braided hair looked down at her notebook, clearly embarrassed by the teacher's behavior. The boy with glasses gave Ray an apologetic glance. Ray stood still, his hand resting on his mop. He'd faced moments like this before. People assuming that because he cleaned floors for a living, he must not have much going on upstairs. Usually he let it slide. It wasn't worth the trouble to correct them. But something about the smirk on Mr. Harrington's face and the discomfort of the students made him hesitate. "What's the problem?" Ray asked quietly. Mr. Harrington raised his eyebrows, clearly surprised that Ray hadn't declined or walked away. He gestured dramatically to the whiteboard. "We're finding the derivative of this function using the chain rule. Think you can handle that?" The mockery in his voice was thinly veiled. Ray set his mop against the wall and stepped closer to examine the board. The problem wasn't particularly complex for someone who understood calculus, but he could see why the students were struggling. Mr. Harrington had skipped some steps in his explanation. "May I?" Ray asked, pointing to the marker tray. Mr. Harrington picked up a blue marker and held it out, his smile widening as if he was about to witness something entertaining. "Be my guest." The room fell silent as Ray took the marker. The students watched with a mixture of curiosity and second-hand embarrassment, expecting him to stare blankly at the board or make a joke to cover his lack of understanding. Ray uncapped the marker and studied the problem for a moment. It had been years since he'd done calculus on a board in front of others, but the principles hadn't changed. He began writing, his handwriting neater than most would expect. "So we have f of x equals cosine of x squared plus 3x, Ray said, speaking quietly but clearly. To find the derivative, we need to use the chain rule because we have a function inside another function. He continued writing, breaking down each step methodically. The outer function is cosine, and the inner function is x squared plus 3x. First, we find the derivative of the outer function with respect to the inner function. The derivative of cosine is negative sine. Ray could feel the shift in the room as he continued. The mockery on Mr. Harrington's face had been replaced with confusion, then shock. The students had straightened in their chairs, their attention fully focused on his explanation. Then we multiply by the derivative of the inner function with respect to x, Ray continued, writing out each step. The derivative of x squared is 2x, and the derivative of 3x is 3, so we get 2x plus 3. He finished writing and stepped back from the board. So the answer is negative sine of x squared plus 3x, multiplied by 2x plus 3. The room was completely silent. Mr. Harrington stared at the board, then at Ray, his mouth slightly open. The students looked between Ray and their teacher, waiting for someone to speak. "That's correct," Mr. Harrington finally said, his voice much quieter than before. "Exactly right, actually." The boy with glasses broke into a grin. "I get it now. The way you explained it makes sense." The girl with braids nodded enthusiastically. "Could you show us another one?" Ray handed the marker back to Mr. Harrington, suddenly aware of all the eyes on him. "I should get back to work. Got a lot to clean before tomorrow." "Wait," Mr. Harrington said, his earlier arrogance gone. Where did you learn calculus?" Ray picked up his mop again, uncomfortable with the attention. "I studied engineering for 3 years at State University. A long time ago. But you're—" Mr. Harrington trailed off, seemingly unable to reconcile the man in the custodial uniform with someone who could solve calculus problems with ease. "The janitor," Ray finished for him with a small smile. "Life takes unexpected turns sometimes, sir." He nodded to the students and continued pushing his cart down the hallway, leaving behind a classroom full of stunned faces. As he turned the corner, he heard excited voices erupting from the room, and a smile crossed his face. Ray hadn't planned on revealing that part of himself today. For years, he'd kept his past education quiet, finding it easier than explaining why he was mopping floors instead of designing bridges. After his mother got sick and the medical bills piled up, he'd left school to work construction. When the physical toll of that job became too much, the custodial position at Westlake had offered stability and benefits. He told himself it was temporary, but temporary had turned into 15 years. As he continued his cleaning routine, Ray thought about the looks on those students' faces when they realized he understood the math they were struggling with. It had felt good to use that part of his brain again, to remember that he was more than what people saw at first glance. By the time Ray finished cleaning the science labs, it was past 6 o'clock. The school was empty now. Even Mr. Harrington and his study group had gone home. As Ray locked up the chemistry supply closet, he wondered if tomorrow would be different. Would Mr. Harrington avoid eye contact? Would the students treat him differently? Or would everything go back to normal, with him fading into the background as he had for years? Either way, something had changed today. A door that had been closed for a long time had cracked open, just a little, and Ray wasn't sure if he was ready for what might come through it. The next morning, Ray arrived at Westlake High School earlier than usual. He'd barely slept, replaying yesterday's events in his mind. For 15 years, he'd kept his head down, done his job, and gone home. Now, with one solved equation, he'd broken the invisible barrier between his world and the academic one he'd left behind long. The school was peaceful at 5:30. Ray liked these quiet moments before the chaos of the day began. He started in the cafeteria, making sure the tables were spotless for breakfast. As he worked, he wondered if yesterday would just become another school rumor that died out after a few days. By 7:15, teachers began arriving. Ray kept his eyes on his work when he heard footsteps approaching in the main hallway. Good morning, Ray. He looked up to see Mrs. Chen, the school principal, standing there with a cup of coffee in her hand. In all his years at Westlake, she had rarely addressed him by name. Morning, Mrs. Chen, he replied, straightening up from where he was fixing a loose floor tile. Do you have a few minutes to talk in my office? She asked, her expression unreadable. Ray's stomach tightened. Was he in trouble? Had Mr. Harrington complained about him interfering with his class? Yes, ma'am, he said, setting down his tools and following her down the hallway. Mrs. Chen's office was neat and organized, with student artwork framed on the walls alongside her degrees and certifications. She gestured for Ray to sit in one of the chairs facing her desk. I heard about what happened in Mr. Harrington's classroom yesterday, she said once they were both seated. Ray nodded, unsure how to respond. I hope I didn't overstep. Overstep? Quite the opposite, Mrs. Chen said, surprising him with a smile. Mr. Harrington came to see me first thing this morning. He was, let's say, processing what happened. Ray shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He'd never sat in the principal's office before, not even when he was a student himself. Ray, how much education do you have in mathematics? The directness of her question caught him off guard. I completed 3 years of engineering at State University before I had to drop out. My mom got sick and the medical bills. He trailed off, not wanting to dive into the whole sad story. Mrs. Chen nodded thoughtfully. And you were good at it? I was on scholarship, Ray said simply. Math and physics came naturally to me. Mrs. Chen leaned forward, resting her elbows on her desk. We have a problem at Westlake. Our advanced calculus students have been struggling on the state exams for the past 3 years. Mr. Harrington is knowledgeable, but he moves too fast, Ray said before he could stop himself. Sorry, I just noticed yesterday that he skipped steps that might seem obvious to him but aren't to the students. Instead of being offended, Mrs. Chen nodded. Exactly. He's brilliant, but sometimes forgets what it's like to learn something for the first time. She paused, studying Ray's face. What would you think about helping some of our students after school? Just a few hours a week? Ray stared at her, certain he had misheard. You want me to tutor students? In calculus? Is that so strange? You clearly know the material. But I'm the janitor, Ray said, the words sounding hollow even to himself. Mrs. Chen's expression softened. You're a person with knowledge that our students need. Your job title doesn't change that. Ray looked down at his hands, rough from years of physical labor. Could he really step back into that world of equations and theories? And what would the other staff think? As if reading his mind, Mrs. Chen added, This would be a paid position, of course, a stipend in addition to your regular salary, and you would still maintain your primary responsibilities. Can I think about it? Ray asked. Of course, but don't think too long. Our students are falling behind and midterms are coming up. Ray left the principal's office in a daze. By lunchtime, word had spread through the school. He could feel eyes on him as he cleaned up a spill in the hallway outside the cafeteria. Mr. Ray? A hesitant voice called out. He turned to see the boy with glasses from yesterday's calculus group. The kid was clutching a textbook to his chest. Hey there, Ray said with a small smile. It's just Ray. I'm Lee, the boy said. I was wondering. Well, a bunch of us were wondering if you could help us with some problems. Mr. Harrington assigned this worksheet and none of us can figure out the last 3 questions. Ray glanced around, noticing a group of students hovering nearby, watching the exchange. I'm not sure if that's appropriate, Lee. I'm not a teacher. But you explained it better than anyone has before, Lee insisted. Please, we're meeting in the library after school. You could just stop by for a few minutes. Before Ray could answer, a sharp voice cut through their conversation. Lee, class started 2 minutes ago. They both turned to see Mr. Wilson, the vice principal, standing with his arms crossed. His gaze shifted from Lee to Ray, his expression hardening. Sorry, Mr. Wilson, Lee mumbled, hurrying past him toward his classroom. Mr. Wilson approached Ray slowly. I understand there was some excitement in Mr. Harrington's class yesterday. Ray nodded, picking up his mop. Just helping out a bit. Mrs. Chen mentioned she spoke with you this morning, Mr. Wilson continued, his voice low. I want to be clear about something, Ray. This is a school with standards. Our teachers are highly qualified professionals with advanced degrees. I understand that, sir. Do you? Because I'm concerned about confusion regarding roles and boundaries, Mr. Wilson said, emphasizing each word. Students need consistency and clarity about who their educators are. Ray met his gaze steadily. With all due respect, Mr. Wilson, I was just trying to help some kids understand their homework. And that's admirable. But perhaps it would be best if you stuck to maintenance issues and left the teaching to those who are qualified. With that, Mr. Wilson turned and walked away, leaving Ray standing alone in the hallway. The rest of the day passed slowly. Ray found himself distracted, making small mistakes in his routine. Twice he had to re-clean areas he'd missed. As the final bell rang, he found himself near the library, supposedly fixing a flickering light. Through the glass doors, he could see Lee and 4 other students sitting at a table, textbooks open, frustration evident on their faces. Ray watched them for a moment, remembering what it felt like to struggle with a concept just beyond your grasp. He thought about Mrs. Chen's offer, about Mr. Wilson's warning, about the 15 years he'd spent putting his education aside. Then, almost without deciding to, he pushed open the library door and walked over to the students' table. "Mind if I join you?" he asked quietly, their faces lit up. "You came!" Lee exclaimed, pulling out a chair. "Just for a little while," Ray cautioned, sitting down. "What's giving you trouble?" For the next hour, Ray guided the students through their calculus problems. He used examples from everyday life, explaining derivatives through speed and acceleration, integrals through distance traveled. He drew diagrams on scrap paper using simple language instead of complex terminology. "That makes so much sense," a girl with curly hair said, completing a problem she'd been stuck on for days. "Why doesn't Mr. Harrington explain it like this?" "Different people learn in different ways," Ray said diplomatically. "Mr. Harrington knows his stuff. Sometimes it's just helpful to hear things explained another way." As Ray was showing them a shortcut for a particularly tricky integration problem, he became aware of someone watching them. Looking up, he saw Mrs. Chen standing in the doorway of the library, a satisfied smile on her face. Next to her stood an older man Ray didn't recognize, dressed in an expensive-looking suit. The students followed his gaze, and the library fell silent. "Don't mind us," Mrs. Chen said, stepping into the room. "Mr. Taylor is from the school board. He was curious about our new tutoring initiative." Mr. Taylor approached their table, observing as Ray walked the students through the final steps of the problem. "Impressive," he said when they had finished. "Mrs. Chen tells me you have quite a background in mathematics, Mr. "Just Ray, sir, and it was a long time ago." "Knowledge doesn't expire," Mr. Taylor said thoughtfully. "Mrs. Chen mentioned her proposal to you. I hope you'll consider it seriously. Our district values talent wherever we find it." After they left, the students bombarded Ray with questions about whether he would be tutoring them regularly. For the first time, Ray allowed himself to consider the possibility. "I haven't decided yet," he told them honestly, "but I'll let you know soon." That evening, as Ray finished his closing rounds, he found himself back in Mr. Harrington's classroom. The calculus problem from yesterday had been erased, replaced by new equations. Ray stood at the empty board, chalk in hand, and began to write. The familiar symbols flowed from his fingers, awakening memories of lecture halls and late-night study sessions, of a young man with dreams of building bridges and skyscrapers. When he finished, he stepped back and looked at what he had created, not just the solution to an equation, but perhaps the first step on a new path. A week had passed since Ray had agreed to Mrs. Chen's proposal. The small study group that had started with Lee and 4 other students had doubled in size. They met 3 afternoons a week in room 103, a classroom that wasn't being used after school hours. Ray would finish his early evening cleaning duties and then spend an hour with the students, guiding them through concepts that had once seemed impossible. "Remember, the derivative tells you the rate of change at any given point," Ray explained, drawing a curve on the whiteboard. "Think of it like driving a car. Your speed at any moment is the derivative of your position." The students nodded, scribbling notes. Among them was Tina, a quiet girl who rarely spoke in class but had started asking thoughtful questions during these sessions. "So integration is like adding up all those little changes to find the total distance?" she asked. Ray smiled. "Exactly. You're finding the area under the curve. It's the opposite of differentiation." As Ray continued explaining, he noticed Mr. Harrington standing in the doorway, arms crossed. The young teacher had been avoiding Ray since the incident in his classroom, clearly embarrassed by what had happened. Ray paused, unsure if he should acknowledge him. "Don't stop on my account," Mr. Harrington said, stepping into the room. "I'm just observing." The students glanced between Ray and their regular teacher, sensing the tension. Ray cleared his throat and continued with his explanation, trying to ignore the scrutiny. When the session ended, the students packed up, chatting excitedly about finally understanding concepts that had eluded them for months. Several thanked Ray on their way out, their genuine appreciation making him feel more fulfilled than he had in years. Mr. Harrington lingered after the others had left. "Your approach is interesting," he said finally. Ray wiped the board clean. "I'm just trying to make it relatable. That's what I've noticed. You use real-world examples." Mr. Harrington hesitated. The students' quiz scores improved dramatically this week. Ray turned, surprised by what sounded almost like a compliment. "That's great to hear. Mrs. Chen wants me to coordinate with you on the curriculum," Mr. Harrington said, the words seemingly difficult for him to get out. "To make sure what you're covering aligns with my classroom teaching." Ray could see how much this pained the younger man, having to collaborate with the school janitor on his own subject matter. "I'm happy to follow your lead," Ray offered, trying to give him an out. "These are your students, after all." Mr. Harrington looked at him for a long moment. "Where did you study?" "State University, Civil Engineering program." "Why didn't you finish?" The bluntness of the question caught Ray off guard. He hesitated, then decided on honesty. "My mother got sick, cancer. Dad was long gone, so it was just me to take care of her. Medical bills piled up, and the scholarship only covered tuition. I took a leave of absence to work construction, thinking I'd go back after she recovered." Ray shrugged. "She didn't recover, and by then I was supporting my younger brother too." "Life happens." Mr. Harrington's expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry." It was a long time ago. An awkward silence fell between them. Finally, Mr. Harrington said, "The state mathematics competition is in 6 weeks. Westlake hasn't placed in the top 5 for years." "I remember seeing the trophies from the 90s in the display case." Ray nodded. "We have some talented students this year, but they need more preparation than I can give them with my regular teaching load." Mr. Harrington seemed to be choosing his words carefully. "Mrs. Chen suggested that you might be able to coach the team." Ray stared at him. "Me? Coach the math team?" "It was her idea," Mr. Harrington said quickly, as if to distance himself from the suggestion. "But I can see the merit in it. The students respond well to your teaching style." Ray sat on the edge of a desk, taking in this unexpected development. What would coaching involve? Practice sessions twice a week. Mock competitions. Strategy for tackling different types of problems under time pressure. Mr. Harrington hesitated. It would mean more hours, more visibility in the school. More visibility. Ray understood what wasn't being said. It would mean stepping further out of the shadows, becoming more than just the man who kept the school clean. It would mean facing more people like Mr. Wilson who believed he should stay in his lane. "Can I think about it?" Ray asked. Mr. Harrington nodded and headed for the door. He paused at the threshold. "For what it's worth, I think you'd be good at it." Then he was gone, leaving Ray alone with his thoughts. The next morning, Ray was fixing a broken locker when Lee found him. "Is it true?" the boy asked, excitement written all over his face. "Are you going to coach the math team?" News traveled fast in high school. "I haven't decided yet," Ray replied. "You have to," Lee insisted. "Mr. Harrington told us during first period. He said with your help we might actually have a chance this year." Ray was surprised by Mr. Harrington's apparent change of heart. "We'll see," he said noncommittally. Throughout the day, other students from the study group approached him with the same question. Their enthusiasm was infectious, making it hard for Ray to imagine saying no. But as he was emptying trash cans near the administration offices after lunch, he overheard raised voices coming from Mr. Wilson's office. "This is highly irregular, and you know it," Mr. Wilson was saying. "The school board can't possibly approve of having maintenance staff instructing students." "The board has already approved the tutoring program," Mrs. Chen replied calmly. Mr. Taylor was quite impressed with Ray's knowledge and teaching ability. "Tutoring is one thing. Coaching the mathematics team is another matter entirely," Mr. Wilson argued. "What message does this send? That we value someone without even a bachelor's degree over our qualified teachers? Ray has shown exceptional ability. He's a janitor, Helen. How will it look to parents? To other schools in the district? We'll be a laughingstock." Ray moved away, not wanting to hear more. Mr. Wilson's words stung, but they weren't anything Ray hadn't thought himself. Was he setting himself up for humiliation? Was he putting the students at risk of embarrassment if the team performed poorly under his guidance? By the end of the school day, Ray had convinced himself to turn down the coaching position. He was finishing mopping the gym floor when Tina appeared clutching a calculus textbook. "Ray, do you have a minute?" she asked hesitantly. He leaned on his mop. "What's up, Tina?" "I wanted to show you something." She opened her textbook to reveal a quiz with a red 92% written at the top. "It's the first A I've ever gotten in math. My dad," she paused, blinking back tears. "My dad said I wasn't cut out for advanced math, that girls like me should focus on something easier." Ray felt a surge of anger at her father's narrow-mindedness. "That's ridiculous. You have a real talent for calculus, Tina." She shrugged. "I just never understood it before. The way you explain things makes sense to me." She looked up at him earnestly. "Are you really going to coach the math team?" Ray sighed. "I'm not sure it's a good idea." "Because Mr. Wilson doesn't think you should?" Tina asked, surprising him with her perceptiveness. "How did you— Everyone knows he doesn't like the idea of you teaching," she said matter-of-factly. "But the rest of us, we don't care that you're the janitor. You're the best math teacher we've ever had." Her words hit him like a physical force. For years, Ray had defined himself by his job title, accepting the limitations it placed on him. He'd buried his education and his potential under the weight of necessity and routine. "I'll think about it," he promised. After Tina left, Ray found himself walking toward Mrs. Chen's office. The principal looked up from her computer as he knocked on her open door. "Ray, come in," she said, gesturing to a chair. "I was hoping to speak with you." "I heard about the math team," Ray said, sitting down. "I also heard Mr. Wilson's concerns." Mrs. Chen sighed. "George is old-fashioned. He believes in rigid hierarchies. He's not wrong that it's unusual," Ray pointed out. "Unusual doesn't mean wrong," she countered. "These students need someone who can reach them, who can make mathematics accessible and even exciting. You've done more in a week of after-school sessions than Mr. Harrington has accomplished in months." Ray looked down at his calloused hands. "What if we fail? What if the team performs poorly at the competition?" "Then they'll have learned and grown regardless," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "This isn't just about winning, Ray. It's about showing these students that knowledge and ability can come from unexpected places, that circumstances don't define potential." Ray recognized that she was talking about more than just the students. She was talking about him too. "The competition is in 6 weeks?" he asked. Mrs. Chen nodded, a small smile forming on her lips as she sensed his shift in thinking. "All right," Ray said, making his decision. "I'll coach the team. But I want to keep my regular job too. The tutoring and coaching will be extra." "Of course," Mrs. Chen agreed readily, "though someday we might need to revisit that arrangement." As Ray left her office, he felt a strange mixture of terror and exhilaration. After 15 years of invisibility, he was stepping into the light. Whatever happened next, success or failure, at least he was moving forward instead of standing still. 3 weeks into coaching the math team, Ray was beginning to question his decision. The state competition was now just 3 weeks away, and while the students were improving, they were nowhere near the level they needed to be to compete against the private academies and magnet schools that dominated the event each year. "Try again," Ray said patiently as he watched Lee struggle with a complex integration problem on the board. "Remember the technique we practiced yesterday?" It was Friday afternoon and everyone was tired. The team of 8 students had been practicing for 2 hours after school, and frustration was mounting. Lee sighed and erased his work for the 3rd time. "I can't get this," he muttered. "Yes, you can," Ray insisted. "Break it down into smaller parts. Don't try to solve the whole thing at once." As Lee made another attempt, Ray checked his watch. He still had the gym floors to clean before heading home. His days had become a blur of mopping, fixing, teaching, and coaching, with barely any time to rest. Dark circles had formed under his eyes, but he pushed through the exhaustion. These kids were counting on him. "Got it!" Lee exclaimed suddenly, circling his answer with a flourish. Ray checked his work and smiled. "Perfect. Now let's try a harder one." A collective groan rose from the team, but they picked up their pencils again. Ray had learned that the key to improvement was constant, incremental challenges, pushing just beyond their comfort zone each time. As they worked through the next problem, Ray noticed Mr. Harrington slip into the back of the classroom. The math teacher had been attending their practice sessions occasionally. sometimes offering suggestions but mostly observing silently. Today, he had a worried expression on his face. When practice ended, the students packed up quickly, eager to start their weekend. Ray began erasing the board as Mr. Harrington approached. "They're improving," Mr. Harrington acknowledged, "but not fast enough." Ray nodded, having reached the same conclusion himself. They understand the concepts. It's the speed and pressure they struggle with. "The winning teams can solve these problems in half the time," Mr. Harrington said, "and the problems at the competition will be even harder." Ray sat on the edge of a desk, suddenly feeling the weight of his responsibility. "I know. I've been reviewing past competition questions. Some of them are college level." "That's what I wanted to talk to you about," Mr. Harrington said, pulling a folder from his bag. "I got copies of the last 5 years' competition problems. They're challenging." Ray flipped through the papers, his heart sinking as he scanned the complex equations. "These are beyond what we've been practicing." "That's what I thought." Mr. Harrington hesitated. "Look, I know we got off to a rough start, but I want the team to succeed. Maybe we should work together on this. 2 approaches might be better than 1. Ray looked up, surprised by the offer. "You want a co-coach?" "If you're open to it," Mr. Harrington said with a shrug that didn't quite hide his sincerity. "You connect with the students in a way I haven't been able to. But I have experience with these competitions. I was on my high school's team." Ray considered the proposal. His pride wanted to prove he could do this alone. But what mattered was giving the students their best chance. "I think that's a great idea," he said finally. Mr. Harrington smiled, seeming relieved. "Great. I was thinking we could meet over the weekend to come up with a new training strategy." "I'm free tomorrow afternoon," Ray offered. "After I finish my Saturday shift. I'll bring coffee," Mr. Harrington promised. As Ray finished his cleaning duties that evening, he felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe with Mr. Harrington's help, the team could actually place in the competition. It wouldn't be first place, but even making it into the top 10 would be a victory compared to recent years. His optimism was short-lived. When he arrived at school Saturday morning, he found a note in his maintenance locker asking him to report to Mrs. Chen's office immediately. The principal was rarely in on weekends, and Ray felt a knot form in his stomach as he made his way to the administration wing. Mrs. Chen wasn't alone. Mr. Wilson sat across from her. Along with an older woman Ray didn't recognize who wore an expensive-looking suit and a stern expression. "Ray, thank you for coming," Mrs. Chen said, her voice unusually formal. "This is Ms. Powell from the district office. She'd like to speak with you." Ms. Powell didn't offer to shake hands. "Mr. Wilson has brought some concerns to our attention regarding the mathematics team," she said without preamble. "Specifically about your role as coach." Ray remained standing, suddenly very aware of his worn work uniform. "What concerns?" Mr. Wilson cleared his throat. "Several parents have contacted the school. They're uncomfortable with their children being taught by someone without proper credentials." "Which parents?" Ray asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "That's confidential," Mr. Wilson replied smoothly. "But the concern is valid. The district has standards for academic instruction." "Ray has been doing an excellent job," Mrs. Chen interjected. "The students' scores have improved significantly." "That's not the issue, Helen," Ms. Powell cut in. "The issue is qualification and liability. If these students perform poorly at the state competition under the guidance of—" She glanced at a paper in front of her. "A maintenance employee, it reflects badly on the entire district." Ray felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. "I understand your concerns," he said carefully. "But I've been working with these students for weeks now. The competition is only 3 weeks away, which is why we need to act quickly," Ms. Powell replied. "The district feels it would be best if you step down from coaching the team. Mr. Harrington can take over full responsibility, as he should have from the beginning." Ray looked to Mrs. Chen, who seemed frustrated but resigned. "I tried to explain the special circumstances," she said quietly. "But the district policy is clear about who can serve as an academic coach." "I see." Ray straightened his shoulders. "May I finish out the day at least? The students are expecting me at practice this afternoon." Ms. Powell and Mr. Wilson exchanged glances. "I suppose that would be acceptable," Ms. Powell conceded. To ensure a smooth transition, Ray left the office feeling hollow. He had known this might happen eventually, but the timing couldn't have been worse. The team was just starting to believe in themselves, and now they would see him removed. Another reminder that people like him weren't meant to step outside their assigned roles. He spent the morning mechanically going through his maintenance duties, dreading the afternoon practice. When Mr. Harrington found him replacing light bulbs in the science wing, the math teacher immediately sensed something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked. Ray told him about the meeting. Mr. Harrington listened, his expression darkening. "That's ridiculous," he said when Ray finished. "The students are making real progress with you." "Apparently that's not enough," Ray said, trying to hide his bitterness. "Credentials matter more than results." "This isn't right," Mr. Harrington insisted. "Let me talk to Mrs. Chen. It won't help." The decision came from the district. Mr. Harrington paced the hallway, thinking, "What if we don't tell them?" "What?" "What if you continue coaching the team unofficially? On paper, I'm the coach. In practice, we work together like we planned." Ray shook his head. "I can't ask you to do that. You could get in trouble." "I'm volunteering," Mr. Harrington said firmly. "Besides, it's for the students. They deserve the best preparation we can give them." Before Ray could respond, they heard voices approaching, the math team arriving for practice. Tina was the first to spot them. "Hey, Ray." "Mr. Harrington," she called out cheerfully. "We came early to get some extra practice in." The students gathered around, notebooks in hand, eager to begin. Ray looked at their hopeful faces and felt his resolve strengthen. These kids had started believing in themselves because someone had believed in them first. "There's something I need to tell you all," Ray began. But before he could continue, the main entrance doors burst open, and a group of adults walked in. Parents, Ray realized. Leading them was a tall man in a business suit who Ray recognized as Tina's father from a photo on her binder. "We'd like to talk to whoever's in charge here," he announced, loudly. Mrs. Chen emerged from her office, alerted by the commotion. "I'm Principal Chen. How can I help you?" "We understand there's been some issue about the math team coach," Tina's father said. "Our children told us the district is removing him." Mrs. Chen glanced at Ray, surprised that the news had spread so quickly. "There have been some concerns about proper credentials." "With all due respect," another parent interrupted, "our children's grades have improved more in the past month than in the entire school year. Whatever this man is doing, it's working." Ray was stunned. These were the same parents who supposedly had complained about him. Tina stepped forward, facing the adults. "Ray explains things in a way that makes sense. He doesn't make us feel stupid when we don't understand something right away. He believes we can do it," Lee added, "and now we're starting to believe it too." Mrs. Chen looked from the parents to the students to Ray, who stood speechless in the middle of it all. "The district policy is very clear," she began. "Then change it," Tina's father said firmly. "Or we can take this to the next school board meeting. I'm sure they'd be interested to hear why the district is removing a successful coach 3 weeks before competition." Ms. Powell, who had emerged behind Mrs. Chen, looked alarmed at the suggestion of a public dispute. She pulled Mrs. Chen aside for a whispered conversation. After a moment, Mrs. Chen turned back to the group. "Perhaps we can find a compromise. Mr. Harrington is officially the team coach on record. If he were to request Ray as an assistant, with Mr. Harrington taking full responsibility for the team's performance." Mr. Harrington stepped forward immediately. "I would be happy to make that request. In fact, I insist on it." Ms. Powell didn't look pleased, but she nodded curtly. "I'll need to clear this with the superintendent. But for now, the practice can proceed as planned." As the adults dispersed, the students surrounded Ray, chattering excitedly. He caught Tina's eye and mouthed, "Thank you." She smiled back, a hint of pride in her expression. Maybe they wouldn't win the competition. Maybe they wouldn't even place. But in that moment, Ray knew they had already achieved something far more important than any trophy. The morning of the state mathematics competition arrived with a mix of excitement and nervous tension. Ray had been up since 4 a.m., too anxious to sleep. He stood in the school parking lot watching the sunrise, wondering if the team was ready for what lay ahead. The last 3 weeks had been intense. Ray and Mr. Harrington had worked together seamlessly, combining Ray's ability to explain complex concepts in relatable terms with Mr. Harrington's experience in competition strategy. The students had practiced every day after school, solving increasingly difficult problems under timed conditions. They had improved dramatically, but would it be enough? The competition would pit them against the best math students in the state, many from prestigious private schools with advanced programs and years of competition experience. A car pulled into the parking lot. breaking Ray's train of thought. It was Mr. Harrington arriving early as planned. Couldn't sleep either? The math teacher asked, handing Ray a cup of coffee. Ray accepted it gratefully. Not a wink. The bus will be here in an hour. The students should start arriving soon. Mr. Harrington looked as nervous as Ray felt. Do you think we've done enough? We've done all we can, Ray replied. The rest is up to them now. They went inside to make final preparations. Ray was technically still on duty as the janitor, but Mrs. Chen had arranged for a substitute to handle his tasks for the day, so he could accompany the team to the competition. It would be held at the State University, ironically, the same institution Ray had attended years ago before life took him in a different direction. One by one, the team members arrived carrying backpacks filled with calculators, scratch paper, and Lucky Charms. Tina wore a necklace with a small pi symbol. Lee had his Lucky pencils, 6 identical mechanical pencils that he insisted had helped him ace every math test since 7th grade. How's everyone feeling? Ray asked as they gathered in the classroom. Terrified, Lee admitted, speaking for the group. That's normal, Mr. Harrington assured them. But remember, you're more prepared than you've ever been. Ray nodded in agreement. We've practiced every type of problem you might encounter. You know the techniques. Now it's just about staying calm and working through each question methodically. What if we freeze up? A quiet boy named Ben asked. What if my mind goes blank? Then you take a deep breath, Ray said, and remember that one problem doesn't determine the whole competition. Skip it and move on. Come back to it later if you have time. The school bus arrived and they loaded up their materials. As they were about to board, Mrs. Chen appeared with Mr. Wilson and, surprisingly, Ms. Powell from the district office. We wanted to wish the team good luck, Mrs. Chen said warmly. Mr. Wilson nodded stiffly. Do your best to represent Westlake well. Ms. Powell stepped forward. The superintendent asked me to convey his support for the team. She glanced at Ray, her expression unreadable. All members of the team. Ray understood the subtle acknowledgement. The district was covering its bases, ready to take credit if the team did well, despite their earlier objections to his involvement. The ride to the university took just over an hour. The students grew quieter as they approached, the reality of the competition setting in. Ray moved through the bus, speaking quietly with each student, offering last-minute advice and encouragement. When they arrived, the size of the event took them by surprise. Hundreds of students from dozens of schools filled the university's main hall, many wearing matching team shirts or jackets. Private academies with long histories of mathematical excellence had sent large contingents, complete with faculty advisors and alumni supporters. The Westlake team looked small and underprepared by comparison. Ray noticed some of his students shrinking into themselves, intimidated by the competition. Hey, he said, gathering them in a corner of the lobby. Look at me. You belong here just as much as anyone else. Don't let the fancy uniforms or big teams fool you. Math doesn't care where you come from or what school you attend. It only cares if your answer is right. They nodded, drawing strength from his words. Remember everything we practiced, Mr. Harrington added. And most importantly, believe in yourselves like we believe in you. The competition was divided into 3 rounds. Individual problem solving, team collaboration, and finally a lightning round for the top-scoring teams. Ray and Mr. Harrington could only watch from the observers section as their students were led to the competition rooms. Now we wait, Mr. Harrington said, settling into an uncomfortable plastic chair. The individual round lasted 2 hours. When the students emerged, their expressions told conflicting stories. Lee looked confident, Tina worried, others somewhere in between. How was it? Ray asked as they gathered in their assigned break room. Harder than I expected, Tina admitted, but I think I solved most of them. There was this one problem about a 3-dimensional rotation that we never covered, Lee said. I had to guess on that one. They compared notes quickly before being called for the team round. In this section, they would work together to solve a series of complex problems. This was where Ray and Mr. Harrington had focused much of their training, teaching the students to recognize each other's strengths and divide tasks efficiently. From the observation window, Ray watched them huddle around a table, heads bent together in concentration. Tina seemed to be taking the lead, assigning different parts of a problem to each team member. They worked with a synchronicity that made Ray's chest swell with pride. The team round passed more quickly, and soon the scores from the first two sections were being tabulated. The top 6 teams would advance to the final lightning round, a fast-paced, high-pressure challenge where speed was as important as accuracy. Ray paced nervously as they waited for the results. Mr. Harrington kept checking his watch, as if that would make the announcements come sooner. Whatever happens, Ray told him. They've already accomplished more than anyone expected. Mr. Harrington nodded. It's not just about today. What you've done for these kids, showing them they can understand and even excel at something they thought was beyond them. That's the real victory. Finally, a competition official appeared with the standings after 2 rounds. The hall fell silent as she began reading the names of the advancing teams. In 6th place, advancing to the lightning round, Westlake High School. A moment of shocked silence fell over their group before the students erupted in cheers. They had made it, just barely, but they had made it. Schools that had dominated the competition for years looked on in surprise as the unremarkable public school team celebrated their achievement. "We did it," Lee shouted, high-fiving his teammates. Ray caught Tina's eye. She gave him a thumbs up, her earlier worry replaced with determined focus. They still had 1 round to go. The lightning round was held in the university's main auditorium, with each team seated at a table on stage. The audience included students, teachers, parents, and even local news reporters covering the prestigious annual event. As the smallest school to advance, Westlake was given the end table. Ray and Mr. Harrington sat in the front row, close enough to see their students' expressions but unable to help them now. This was their moment. The lightning round consisted of 20 rapid-fire questions. Teams had 30 seconds to submit each answer, with points awarded for both accuracy and speed. The first few questions went to the private academies, who answered with practiced efficiency. But then Westlake began to find their rhythm. Tina quickly solved a complex integration. Ben, the quiet boy who had worried about freezing up, calmly worked through a probability problem. Lee tackled a 3-dimensional geometry question similar to the one that had stumped him earlier. By the halfway point, Westlake had moved up to 4th place. The audience began to pay more attention to the unexpected contenders. Even the commentator noted their surprising performance. Westlake High continues to impress in their first finals appearance in over a decade, he announced after they correctly answered a particularly difficult question about vector calculus. With 3 questions remaining, they had climbed to 3rd place. Ray could hardly believe what he was seeing. The team that had struggled with basic derivatives just weeks ago was now holding their own against the state's elite math programs. The final question appeared on the screen, a complex problem involving both differential equations and 3-dimensional visualization. Ray recognized it as combining 2 areas they had practiced extensively. This was their chance. The other teams bent over their work, but Ray saw Tina's eyes light up with recognition. She quickly sketched something and showed it to her teammates. They nodded in agreement, and Lee began calculating the answer while the others double-checked his work. With 10 seconds remaining, they submitted their solution. The judge reviewed the answers. The final question goes to Westlake High School. That puts them in 2nd place overall. The audience erupted in applause. Ray and Mr. Harrington jumped to their feet, cheering loudly. The students embraced each other on stage, their faces a mixture of shock and joy. As medals were distributed and photos taken, Ray stood back, watching his team bask in their well-deserved recognition. Mr. Harrington came to stand beside him. "We did it," the math teacher said, offering his hand. Ray shook it firmly. "They did it. We just showed them how." After the ceremony, as the team was preparing to return to the bus, a woman in a university blazer approached Ray. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm Dr. Rivera, chair of the mathematics department. We were very impressed with your team's performance today." "Thank you," Ray replied. "They worked incredibly hard." "I understand you were instrumental in their preparation," she continued. "Mr. Harrington spoke very highly of your teaching methods. He mentioned you once studied engineering here?" Ray nodded, surprised that Mr. Harrington had discussed him with the university staff. "We have a program for returning adult students," Dr. Rivera said, handing him a card. "Full scholarships for those with exceptional mathematical ability who had to interrupt their education. I'd be very interested in discussing your situation, if you're open to it." Ray stared at the card in his hand, momentarily speechless. Think about it, she said with a smile before walking away. On the bus ride home, the students were jubilant, reliving every moment of the competition. Ray sat quietly, turning the professor's card over in his hands, considering possibilities he hadn't allowed himself to imagine in 15 years. Tina slid into the seat next to him. "What's that?" she asked, pointing to the card. "A second chance, maybe," Ray replied honestly. She smiled. "You gave us one of those. Seems only fair you get one too." As the bus pulled up to Westlake High, Ray could see a crowd waiting. Teachers, parents, other students, all cheering for the team's unexpected success. Among them stood Mrs. Chen, Mr. Wilson, and even Ms. Powell. The team stepped off the bus to applause, carrying their second-place trophy proudly. Ray followed, no longer just the man who cleaned their classrooms, but someone who had helped them achieve something remarkable. Tomorrow, he would still mop the floors and fix the leaky faucets, but he would also call the number on Dr. Rivera's card. The path that had seemed closed to him for so long had reopened, just like the door he had cracked open for his students, proving that knowledge, once gained, is never truly lost. And that potential can be found in the most unexpected places.